The February 29th, 2012 meeting of the Ways and Means Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Andrews? Mr. Antelli? Mr. Daniele? Mr. Esposito? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. McCann? Mr. O'Brien? Mr. Tucciarello? Chairman Yolovich?
Here. Are there any speakers signed up for the public forum?
There are not.
Is there anyone here that is not signed up that would like to speak? Mr. Gregory, come forward, please.
Thomas Gregory, used for my mailing address, Post Office Box 14662, Rochester, New York. And I'd like to speak to the letter from Mr. Patterson to the county legislature on the rescinding of the sheriff's raise. I think you have before you a copy of a preliminary report that's being put together right now. Just basically looking at whether this was, looking at the constitution of this movement of this law that you passed. The law is perfectly legal. It perfectly, if it fits every, I went through it. I use, whenever I do a test, I use what they call null hypothesis testing. In other words, I argue against everything and then make whatever it is prove itself. And frankly, I've spent about 7 or 8 days of continuous study at the appellate division, basically trying to prove that this shouldn't have gone through. It's passed every test. It's a good test. Mr. Patterson raises, Legislator Patterson raises in his letter and the proposal signed by all the Democrats, members of the Democratic caucus, a bunch of discretionary points. And bottom line is, I'll be honest with you, as a member of the public, my biggest concern as a member of the public is that what happens in this legislative body is legal and follows law. And I tell you the truth is that everything is basically, as far as I'm concerned, was a good passage. I think that one of the things that you will note is that the sheriff is actually grossly underpaid compared to CEOs doing the same type of work that he would be doing in a public setting or in a private setting. Not only that, I think Mr. Patterson's letter brings forth a question I think we should be looking at in the county legislature. And that would be what we're paying currently the clerk of the legislature, which I think, or not the clerk, the clerk of the court. That would be, I think it's about $87,000, grossly under salary for the work that office does. And more importantly, and I would say the county executive, I think it's time that maybe if we're going to do anything like convene a new study, we should be looking at what we're paying our county executive. When you look at the amount of effort, amount of work, the amount of responsibility, and the budget that she manages, we're certainly should be looking at, in my opinion, an increase in wage for that office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Is there anyone else that is not signed up to speak that would like to address this forum? Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. That you have the minutes from the January 25th, 2012 session in your folder. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified by any changes by the end of the day. The next item is new business. Madam Clerk.
Referral 12-59, rescinding the pay raise for the Monroe County Sheriff.
Moved by Legislator O'Brien, seconded by Legislator Haney. It has been my policy on any committees that I've chaired over the years to allow the author of the resolution to present his resolution, and I'm going to do the same thing here. But being that this is a new cycle and it's a new committee for me, I'd like to just let you know that my rules are very simple. You get up, you introduce your proposal, you explain it, and then that's all you have to say for the rest of the meeting. The rest will be discussed by the committee. So, Mr. Patterson, if you'd like to introduce your referral, please do so. No, please note that Legislator Andrews is here. No, from your seat. If you...
Thank you for the courtesy. And thank you all for allowing me to address this committee regarding the referral 120059, which calls for the rescission of the budget amendment passed by this body in December of 2011. I was not a member of this body when this pay increase was passed, but I was in the room as a citizen, sitting in the hard seats in the back. I was appalled at what you had done, quite frankly. Folks, people don't think well of politicians in general, and this pay raise is the reason why. This pay raise didn't follow any of this body's guidelines and procedures. We know it didn't go through the compensation committee because the compensation committee hasn't met in a few years. It certainly didn't do what my referral is doing today, coming before your committee. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an obligation to stand for the people. We have an obligation to do more than just the bare minimum. We have an obligation to follow all the rules, to be forward and open and frank. We have an obligation to bring these matters to this body, to make it open to our community so that they can come forward and express to us their concerns about what we're doing. It's not our money. We are simply the stewards of it. We cannot pass it out willy-nilly to our friends here and there. We have an obligation to rescind this pay raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Is there any further discussion on the resolution? Legislator O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, through you, I have a question to the administration that I hope we'll know the answer for. There is a website called seethroughnewyork.net, which, as I understand it, is run by a downstate conservative think tank type place that is based on FOIL requests of the comptroller's database. And when you review that, you can look at different elected officials, including those in Monroe County, and looking at the amounts that are reflected on that website, for example, for the county clerk is the same as our county clerk budget document shows, and also is true for the county executive. The budget document has the same thing that See Through New York has. And it's curious, with respect to years 2009 and 2010, within a couple of $1,000s, the sheriff's total pay is reasonably consistent, a little bit less actually than what the sheriff's salary had been set at. But for last year, it goes up rather dramatically, and I think that where we were was entering this year, the sheriff's salary was $123,030, and this shows pay of $141,219, which is actually even more than what we passed in December. So my question through you, Mr. Chairman, is do we know what the total pay of the sheriff was so we can at least start at a place where we understand what the facts are?
Through the chair, I am familiar with that website, and we will take a look at that and try to get some clarification for you, but I do not have the reason for that right here.
Okay, if we could try to determine that before full-fledged, that would be helpful. Thank you. And then I guess I'd just like to say, Mr. Chair, that my observation of the sheriff is true of many people that I think work in government, and I believe the sheriff to be an honest and hardworking and person of great integrity, and I think he's committed to his job. And I think that same statement can be made about many people in public service. My objection to the pay raise, in addition to the things that Legislator Patterson has pointed out in terms of process, is really the kinds of things that we have not been able to do at a time when our budget limitations are so tight. And as a couple of illustrations of what I'm talking about, relatively minor things, but our caucus had suggested that it was important to large segments of our community to have basketball hoops at Shalott Beach, for example, for $5,000. So rejected. We've tried to establish permanent funding through this SSP program for people that are both deaf and blind and struggle with both those obstacles together, with a little bit of assistance so they can get to stores. So $20,000 a year, that. We were able to find private funding for that for this year, but we're not able to put it, budget it for as a budgeted matter. We saw this past year that we actually saw reductions in our ability to conduct lead paint testing. Where relatively small amounts of money can go a long ways towards. So it's not that I don't believe that the sheriff maybe doesn't deserve raise in the sense that many elected officials deserve, but deserve also means that we have to understand, do we have the resources to afford? And what things are we not affording if we go forward with pay raises like this? And so I guess my point is, until we can take care of more of the basic needs of people in our community, I don't think that our priority can be or should be elevating the pay of people who are already at a fairly high level of pay in our community. And I appreciate you hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Is there any further discussion? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank and congratulate Legislator Patterson for bringing this before us. Obviously, we discussed this issue before, but never in this committee, and I think this committee is the proper place to do that. I think this proposal is the right thing to do, as I elaborated when I was here on budget night and voted against the amendment to raise the sheriff's pay, mostly because I don't think it's an appropriate time for this county to be raising the pay of any high-ranking officials, whether they be elected or not, but especially in the elected case. And also, as we had much discussion about the fact that there was no public notice and no discussion like this about this proposal. That night, I remember thinking to myself and saying, I think, in fact, that the concept of paying the sheriff and the DA was one that was worthy of consideration by this body and by this committee in particular. But we needed to have more information and learn more about whether or not that was true, that the assertion being made in the amendment that the sheriff and the DA should be paid the same amount was, in fact, justified. Since that amendment was passed with very little notice on budget night, we've learned a great deal. And I've continued to come to the conclusion that this raise was not worthy and appropriate for two main reasons that were not clear at budget night when this passed. The first being that by linking the sheriff's pay to the district attorney's pay, which is set by New York State law, come April 1st, the sheriff is entitled to a massive pay increase. Much more so than even the $13,000 that was approved on the budget amendment vote in December. An amount that is, quite frankly, just not worthy of any official to have an increase in 1 year. That's troubling. The second one was we finally had an opportunity to read or look into and research the statements made on that night that the sheriff's pay was not competitive with other sheriffs around the state. That, in fact, is not true. To our research, Monroe County Sheriff, before the amendment that raised his pay, was the second highest paid sheriff in New York State. And commensurate with other police chiefs in the Rochester, Buffalo, and Syracuse regions, this increase would effectively allow him to be paid 70% more than his peers. That's simply not justified, especially in light of the financial difficulties we face. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting this referral and would hope that we have, with the benefit of hindsight in the last 2 months, more information that would encourage the members of this committee to do so. But I'd like to ask some follow-up questions sort of along the lines of what Legislator O'Brien was asking with regards to how the actual compensation will work compared to what's budgeted. The amendment and the finally adopted 2012 county budget sets the pay for the sheriff at $136,700. Knowing what Legislator O'Brien found on the See Through New York website, that the compensation level for the sheriff last year alone was $141,000, or may have been, despite the fact that in that budget year he was only budgeted to make $123,000, how does it work with the discretion of the sheriff, or maybe it's the county executive, with regards to compensation of employees compared to the budgeted amount? I guess my question through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration is, can an employee be paid more than the amount budgeted?
Through the chair, Scott Adair, Director of Finance. The only way that I can think of off the top of my head this evening that a county employee could be paid more than what is budgeted would be some sort of a promotion during the year, a step increase during the year, or quite possibly there is the option that this body approved, and that was a vacation buyback of 1 week of time for, I believe it's just the M&P group, that would make a difference between what they would earn from the budget book's presentation to what their final W-2 would say. And I shouldn't say W-2 because there's other things that go into the W-2 besides cash payments as far as their total annual salary.
Thank you. And so from those answers, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, it doesn't sound like any of those things could possibly have applied to the sheriff last year. Is that right?
Through the chair, the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head that could possibly apply would be a vacation buyback. But again, that's off the top of my head. I'm not 100% sure that that answer is correct.
Thank you. And even if that were true, I presume 1 week's vacation wouldn't be $18,000 or anything in the vicinity of an 8%, or not even 8%, excuse me, an 18% pay increase. So let me ask in the context of the coming budget year then. We'll take, Mr. Finnerty's going to get back to us on the see-through New York to see if that's an accurate number in terms of what the sheriff was paid last year, which is very much appreciated. But in the context of this year, the budget has in it $136,700. As of April 1st, the sheriff is going to be entitled to $160,000 once the state Supreme Court judicial pay increases go into effect. Without amending the budget, is the sheriff able to basically collect that additional amount of pay? I guess that's a question to the administration through you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, I'm not sure I'm following the question exactly. What I understand from what you've stated is the fact that it's an implication that the state budget's going to pass with the salary increases for the judges. That's something that we don't know at this point in time. That's something that's assumed by the referral and assumed by yourself in the questioning. So I don't necessarily know that that can be affirmed at this point in time. We'll have to wait until after the state legislature takes its course with the state budget. Beyond that, I believe we do have a budgeting situation regarding the increase for the judges and how that would impact both the district attorney and the sheriff's salary at this point in time. And that is something that both myself and the law department are looking into. As you may be aware of or may not be aware of, the last time or one of the previous times that the state made an increase like this, there was a mid-year change for all the counties to have to deal with. The state also provided the funding to the counties for the 9-month period that they would be required to make these individuals whole. That is under the present proposed governor's budget. We can't find any language in there stating that the state's going to provide that funding. At this point in time, we do not have the funding budgeted for in either of these line items for either the district attorney or the sheriff. And that is something that we are looking into. I myself, as well as the law department, is looking into to find out how exactly that would happen as we move forward.
Thank you. That's all very helpful, some of it which I did not know. But I guess for the purposes of the fact that this referral is before us right now, and that, as you stated, the governor's budget does include the pay increases for judges and does not include money for the counties to pay for DA's corresponding pay increase, how is it that we expect to handle this, presumably just on the DA's and the sheriff's side this year, knowing that this is likely something that's going to happen within a month from today?
Is that through me?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you.
Through the chair, again, a great question, and it's one that we continue to look at. It's similar to many of the other unfunded mandates that the governor's budget projects down onto counties and other municipalities. It will be something that we will look into to determine what the proper course of action is from the county's perspective regarding this state decision to increase pay of judges, which ultimately affects other individuals on county payrolls. Unfortunately, I don't have a solid answer on that for this evening. Just as the other things inside of the state budget, we don't know definitively, and once we do know the details of it, we will get an answer to this body or to whomever requires an answer to that question.
Thank you very much. I certainly look forward to that. I would say a couple things. First, perhaps this committee should put off voting on this referral till after we know what's in the state budget, so we have certainty. But it also speaks, in my mind, very clearly to additional reasons why the pay raise is unwarranted. The DA's increase in association with the state judicial pay increase is state mandated. It's something that has to happen and something we have to deal with. However, the sheriff's is not. The fact that we even have to consider how we might deal with a potentially $37,000 increase in 1 year for the sheriff is not justifiable by this county, by this body, given our current financial situation. It's further reason why these two salaries should not be linked. They're not similar jobs, they're not the same jobs, and we are in no position to provide that additional funding for the sheriff when we don't have to. So for that reason, I'd either ask that maybe we consider this next month, or 2 months, I guess, would be before we know the final outcome of the state budget, hopefully. Or, you know, I think, as I said before, vote in favor of this referral to take this issue off the table for what is a difficult financial situation for this county, to pay an elected official more money than they deserve, more money than we can afford, and money that should never have been approved in the first place. So I guess that's sort of the basis of what, you know, I know we said in December and what we're saying now, but I think these questions point to the fact that the way this was done was wrong, and this is no time to be giving pay increases to elected officials, let alone of this potential magnitude. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to wrap my feeble brain around the issue of what the sheriff's salary is going to be. For the purposes of my couple of questions, let's assume that the salary of Supreme Court judges is going to go to the $160,000 level, as is included in the governor's budget, and I don't know of anyone in Albany who has suggested that that should not take place. As to the district attorney, where Section 183A of the Judiciary Law says that the district attorney's salary must equal, well, there's a size qualification. I think it's limited to counties above a certain population, but it applies to Monroe. Section 183A of the Judiciary Law requires that the district attorney be paid the same amount of money as a Supreme Court justice. Is there any question that come April 1st, again, if we assume that the governor's budget on this item will be approved, is there any question that the salary of the district attorney will not be $160,000 as of April? Through you, Mr. Chairman?
Are you asking me or are you asking them? Okay. I'm glad you're asking them, because I don't have the answer.
Through the chair, just to make sure we're, I believe, dealing with the same numbers. I believe the district attorney's salary is, what's the word I'm looking for? Lack of a better term, is pegged to 90% of that salary of what the judges would make. So I believe that it would go to somewhere in the mid 140s. It's 100%. I'm sorry. Okay, it is 100%. I was thinking it was 90%.
I'm not sure how our county finance director is supposed to be an expert on the salaries for that are going to be established by the state budget. That's not passed
I'm not
yet.
asking him to determine that. I said on the assumption that the Supreme Court judges' salaries are going to $160,000 on April 1, what will the salary of the district attorney be?
But again, through you, Mr. Chair, the point of order would be you're asking for speculation from our county finance director based on the state budget. Because you're assuming that the state budget will be passed.
I'm asking you to answer a simple question. If Supreme Court judges are paid $160,000 as of April 1, what will we pay the district attorney? That's a simple question. That's not asking him to draw any conjecture on the state budget.
It is asking him to do just that, Legislator Haney. Point of
Hold on
order.
a second.
I don't follow you at all, sir.
Let me rule on this. From a simple point of view, and as an assumption, because no one knows if that pay scale is going to be
Right.
approved or not, but if it were approved at 161.7 or whatever that's supposed to be, it's my understanding that the DA's salary would become that. Now, I'm going to pass that back through to the finance director, and he can correct me as if I'm right, as to whether I'm right or wrong.
Through the chair, or to the chair, you are correct in assuming that it would be 100%. But to further go on, to respond to what I believe Legislator Haney's question is it's repeating an answer that I had to Legislator Esposito's question, in the fact that that is something that we are looking at, because based on the research that we've done previously, the raises in this area have been provided for by state funding to cover the gap between the April 1st budget effective date from the state's perspective to the December 31st date of the county's budget. And then that would then allow the county to then appropriately budget for that salary in the subsequent year. This is an area that, again, without knowing exactly what the state budget's going to do, we're still reviewing it to determine what the answer is to that question. Personally, my belief is that it's what it is in the budget at this point in time.
Well, I'm not an attorney, and there's maybe I should lean to my left here. But when you've got a section of state law that says the district attorney will be paid exactly what a Supreme Court justice makes, I don't know how there can be any question about what this county, assuming the Supreme Court justice is going to be $160,000. I don't see how there can be any question about whether we like it or not. And let's assume we don't. I don't see how there's any question, but what we're forced, I mean, state law supersedes county law.
All right, Paul, I understand what you're saying, and I think I'm going to have to fall back to Carmen here a little bit now. I think that is not a decision that we're going to be able to make here. I think that's a legal decision, and you said it yourself. You're not a lawyer, and neither are we, or except for Mr. O'Brien.
Well, I guess
just wanted to comment to the point of order that it's not a specious question to understand how we prospectively may have to pay a county employee for something that's already in the governor's budget. I mean, it's not, you know, some hypothetical. Right. It's in the budget now. The budget may be revised, right. But just to understand how we would deal with such a situation if that comes forward.
I've let this go a little further than I should have, because first of all, we're not talking about the district attorney. We're talking about the sheriff. And the resolution before us is only about the sheriff and not the district attorney. So let's cut this line of questioning right now and get back to the sheriff's salary.
Well, the relevance, Mr. Chairman, is that the amendment that was adopted in December ties the sheriff's salary to the district attorney's salary. So what the district attorney's salary is highly relevant. But if I would be fascinated to know, through you, Mr. Chairman, whether the county attorney is prepared to write a legal opinion saying that we will not have to be paying, ignore the number.
Well, first of all, the county attorney is not here, so we can't answer that for him. I don't know if he's prepared to do that.
Is there no one here from the county attorney's office?
The chair, no, there is not.
Is that by accident or design?
Through the chair, it was inadvertent.
I resent that, Paul.
Through the chair, the attorney assigned here had a family emergency. My apologies.
Well, let me put in a request to the administration then for a legal opinion as to whether the county will not be obligated in come April to pay the district attorney whatever the state is paying a Supreme Court justice in April.
Time we're talking about
But
the
you
sheriff's
can't
raise.
discuss the sheriff without discussing the district attorney
At
because
this point
they're
in time,
tied
it's
to each other.
assumption.
Right. Calm down. This
I entered
question,
my request, but since we're not going to get straightforward answers, I will tell you why I am voting for this. We gave the sheriff, as of January 1, an 11% pay raise. His salary went up $13,000 from 123, actually 13,700, from 123,030 to 136,700. The amendment that was adopted in December merely changed, the only thing it changed was to strike the 90% of the district attorney's salary and to make it say the same as the district attorney's salary. It is pretty apparent, barring something occurring in Albany that no one's currently talking about, and I admit that can happen in Albany. But at least as we are looking at the facts as we now know them, the sheriff's salary as of April 1 will go to $160,000. Namely parity with the district attorney, which is what the budget amendment of adopted in December says, and the district attorney having to be at parity with Supreme Court judges. That will mean that within a 4-month period, the sheriff will have received a 30% pay raise. Now, this is at a time, in addition to the things that Mr. O'Brien cited, in which our larger employee unions have been without a pay raise for, I think it's 4 years. It's either 3 or 4. We have been unable to offer them 2.5% or 3% pay raises in any one of those years. But what will we've already given the sheriff a 14% pay raise, or an 11%, I'm sorry. And as of April 1, it would appear this raise is going to be 30%. And as of, furthermore, in another year, there's going to be another pay raise that cumulatively the sheriff will have gotten a 41% pay raise.
What's he going to be making in 2028? Have we figured that one out yet? I mean,
No,
we're
I
trying
haven't,
to
but
project out future budgets that haven't even been passed, making it sound like amendments to the state budget are something that's uncommon, and I think we're straying way off the mark on this one. So I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, to please keep this to the sheriff's pay as it stands right now, and to this referral which talks about bringing the pay back to the state it was in 2011. I think that's what we're talking about.
I think I attended.
And that's where I think it should be, is back where it was. Because if this legislature had done nothing in December, the sheriff's salary next month, in April, would have gone to $144,000. If this legislature had done nothing.
Paul, look, that's conjecture. We don't know that right now. We have no idea
You
what
wanna
the
make a
state
bet,
legislature.
Mr.
Well,
Chairman?
I'm just telling you, we don't know.
I'll give you odds of 10 to 1.
You must have better knowledge of the state legislature than the rest of us do then, because we don't know what they're going to do. And I'm not going to stand here and argue with you. You made your point. I think Mr. Daniele made a good point, and I'm going to move on to Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, to Mr. Daniele's point, and the reason that the questioning that Legislator Haney and I both undertook about the pay levels of the DA and the sheriff and the state judges is relevant is because in December, when we passed this amendment, we did so with incomplete information. It was the understanding stated on this floor that these judicial pay raises were not going to happen, as has continued to be said. This is not a standard budgetary item for the state. Even if the state doesn't fund the judicial pay raises, they're still happening. The Judicial Pay Commission that was adopted last summer is the law unless the state legislature takes a proactive action to rescind it. So the level of $160,000 is not conjecture, it's not speculative, it's not something a county shouldn't know. It's actually in effect, okay? So that we're going to pretend like it's not something we have to deal with is part of the reason we're raising this today. We did not just approve a $13,000 pay raise for the sheriff, even though I think that was inappropriate of itself. We've opened ourselves up to a much greater number that is even more inappropriate, and it's very important for this committee in particular to understand that. So I think what's happened here is it's clear that there's still confusion about this matter. It's clear there's confusion about what the sheriff actually made last year. I think it's appropriate for this committee to table this proposal tonight and bring it back when there is clarity, when the law department and the finance director have an opportunity to do their review about what they expect to happen from the state. And so therefore, I guess I'd move that we table this referral tonight so we can bring it back when we all are clear and certain as to what we're talking about.
Tabling motion by Legislator Esposito, seconded by Legislator O'Brien. We'll have a roll call vote on the
Motion to table.
on the motion table.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Antelli? No. Mr. Daniele? No. Mr. Esposito? Yes. Mr. Gamina? No. Mr. Haney? Yes. Mr. Hanna? No. Mr. McCann? No. Mr. O'Brien? Yes. Mr. Tucciarello? No. Chairman Yolovich?
No.
4 to 7, it fails.
Motion fails. Is there any further discussion? Legislator Esposito.
On the main motion, Mr. Chairman, it's confounding to me that this body, this committee in particular, wouldn't want more information to answer these questions. I mean, why we wouldn't want to know about how we're potentially spending almost $100,000 in increases in the next 3 years for an office that already makes 70% more than its peers in the area is really troubling, especially when all we need to do is wait a month to get certainty at the things Mr. Adair was mentioning, and there is great confusion about. I'm very disappointed that we can't have a real discussion about this and that this is the way this committee is going to act. I encourage you to rescind the pay raise since that's the vote we have now, and thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Legislator Esposito, just very quickly, I don't want to put you on the spot, but where do you get the 70% number from? That really is confusing to me.
Research of the pay levels of police chiefs in the Rochester, Syracuse, and Buffalo area, police chiefs, actually, police chiefs, show that the average pay is about $95,000. With the increases that are estimated to go into effect for this sheriff's increase that we've approved by pegging it to the DA, which pegs it to the state judicial raises, it would make him 70% higher paid than those peers. He already was the second highest most paid sheriff in New York State. I don't think we have an issue here where our sheriff was underpaid, which gets back to the issue we talked about on budget night. I don't want to bring up all of those arguments, but those are the numbers that I have. I'd be happy to provide them to you or to this committee if we were going to be willing to discuss this at a later date.
Well, the disparity is some of those police chiefs only have 10 men in their department where we have 1,500.
I understand that there's a great disparity in the sheriff's offices.
There, so,
sure.
Rather than getting into a hassle about it. Is there any further discussion? Legislator Daniele.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be voting no, and I will be encouraging my caucus to follow my lead in voting no on this referral. I question the Democratic referral's timing. I do believe that Mr. Legislator Esposito has a point, but I think they should have thought about that point before they introduced this at this time when perhaps there is information we don't know, and we're trying to address an issue that is not fact but merely speculation. I think As a general rule, this legislative body voted for an increase in December. It was merited by many, many, many standards. For your information, Legislator Esposito, police chief of the town of Brighton makes over $140,000 a year, much smaller force. Irondequoit, almost 140. Greece, almost 140. All more than. So I don't know quite where you're getting those numbers, maybe Mayberry or some other villages that I'm not familiar with what those chiefs are making, but I can assure you that our sheriff's pay is fair, it is equitable. At this point in time, it is appropriate, and I will be voting no. Our sheriff does a phenomenal job. He manages the largest sheriff's department in the state of New York with 1,200 employees. I wouldn't disagree with Legislator Esposito, and I will certainly relay his sentiments to our district attorney that I think that pay increase is a bit ludicrous, and hopefully maybe during your day job you can address that issue with our state legislature. So on that, I will be voting no, and I will encourage my caucus to do the same.
Is there any further discussion? Legislator Haney.
Just briefly, for the record, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out that the salary of the Erie County Sheriff this year is $79,092. The salary of the Onondaga County Sheriff is $110,120. The salary of the Albany County Sheriff is $104,525. The salary of the Nassau County Sheriff is $120,642.
And I would also point out that the average size of those forces are less than half of the size of the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. If we're going to start, throwing facts out, there's plenty to go.
Is there any further discussion? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to clarify that at no point did I call the DA's increase that's being mandated by the state ludicrous. The only thing that's ludicrous is that this committee would take action not knowing what the ramifications are, and that the majority leader would indicate he's comfortable with having a pay increase that might lead, and in fact almost is certain to lead to an increase of pay for the sheriff to $160,000 this April. I'd like to quote something he said, since he's into quoting me. When asked by 13 Wham News about the potential that the sheriff's increase would lead to $160,000 come April 1st, he simply said, if that were to happen, Sheriff O'Flynn would get a stupid increase in pay. I acknowledge that's a bad idea and have no reason to believe the state is going to give judges a raise. That's what you really believe, yet you're willing to approve this increase and allow it to go forward without complete information. And in fact, with misinformation. To think that this increase is not going to happen is wrong. And I'm not going to have you mischaracterize my words. Unless you want to dispute what you say, I think you should let that record stand for itself and agree that we should not be allowing increases of this nature for elected officials at this point in time for this county.
Let me clarify something here. We are not in the process of approving the raise for the sheriff of Monroe County. We did that back in December during the budget hearings. We are here to talk about Mr. Patterson's referral to reduce that back to what it was. So let's get straight what we're voting on first of all. So is there any other discussion on this matter? Hearing none, let's have a roll call vote on this.
Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. Antelli? No. Mr. Daniele? No. Mr. Esposito? Yes. Mr. Gamina? No. Mr. Haney? Yes. Mr. Hanna? No. Mr. McCann? No. Mr. O'Brien? Yes. Mr. Tucciarello? No. Chairman Yolovich?
No.
4-7. Fails.
Motion fails. Next item on the agenda.
Referral 12-64.
Moved by Legislator Gamita, seconded by Legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, what was the amount of the contribution from Comita in the last year, the 2011 budget year?
Through the chair, $265,000.
So it's the same?
Through the chair, yes.
Through the chair, why is it not increasing? I mean, I'm sure the cost of the services that we're providing is increasing. If nothing else, the pension costs and the health insurance costs of the employees that staff Comida is increasing. So why wouldn't the contribution go up?
Through the chair, Comida has its own staff that it pays for. The amount that's paid to the county pays for rent of approximately $60,000, overhead of $35,000, and salaries of various employees that do some work for Comida that are county employees of about $50,000.
Well, I guess my question, through you, Mr. Chairman, my question is, have we explored, I mean, Comida, the last I looked, was sitting on a very large unrestricted fund balance. The county has trouble rubbing nickels together. Why do we not get a larger contribution from Comida to the county?
Through the chair, the amount that Comida is contributing has gone up over the last 10 years from, I think, $190,000 to $265,000, and it more than covers the amount of the department costs.
Well, I mean, obviously I'm going to vote for this because $265,000 is better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, as my grandmother would say. But I don't know why, and the same thing is true of the next referral from the Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation. I don't know why we don't get larger contributions to the county. There's nothing prohibiting larger contributions. And I don't know why we don't get larger contributions to the county from these two entities.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-65.
Moved by legislator McCann, seconded by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-66.
Moved by legislator Daniele, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-67.
Moved by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Antelli. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-68.
Moved by legislator Antelli, seconded by legislator Hanna. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-69.
Moved by legislator Hanna, seconded by legislator Gamina. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-71.
Moved by legislator Gamina, seconded by legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? Paul, before I recognize you, I'd like to introduce in the back of the room our historian, Carolyn Vaca, is here tonight. If you'd stand up, Carolyn, just be acknowledged. And if there are any questions that we can't answer up here, I'm sure she can. Paul, you're next.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, where are the county archives?
Through the chair, they are currently in St. John Fisher College, but Ms. Vaca's coming up and she can answer any more questions you have.
Through the chair, part of them are in our facility on King Street, but the bulk of them are in a facility at St. John Fisher College.
What's the King Street facility?
That's the records management facility run by the county.
Okay. And the Fisher campus, where are they? Are they in the Lavery Library? Or?
That's correct. They're in a separate part of the library that was constructed specifically for the county archives.
Are they available to the public or the Fisher?
Yes.
Okay. What do the archives that are at Fisher, what do they consist of broadly?
That question is through the chair, by the way.
Through the chair, they include the history of the government of the county, various agencies and departments. We have historical records from the health department, from the county penitentiary, tax assessment rolls, district attorney's collection, coroner's collection. They're fairly extensive, dealing with the government of the county all the way back to the early 19th century.
Do you have an idea what the cubic footage of those content? I think that's the way library holdings are measured, is in cubic footage. Do you have an idea roughly what they might be?
Roughly at this point, I would say we're at about 3,600 cubic feet.
Okay. Now, the transmittal says that you have sponsored various public exhibits with these documents, etc. Could you give me some examples of these? I don't recall ever being informed of any public exhibits.
Through the chair, over the years we've had many exhibits. We had an exhibit at George Eastman House. We had an exhibit a long time ago at Strong Museum. More recently, we had an exhibit on the Goler collection that was well advertised and well attended throughout the fall of 2010. And this fall, we just completed an exhibit on the county response to 9/11, which was also well attended.
And where were those exhibits?
The ones that were in the institutions that I mentioned were there. They were also on Fisher campus in an exhibit gallery right on East Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Is there any further discussion? Thank you, Carolyn. We appreciate your time. Not to be a stickler, but let's stay with the decorum and run things through the chairman, please. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-72.
Moved by Legislator McCann, seconded by Legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the administration, since this is a new grant, could I just get a quick overview of what Rochester's transformation program is, or what we're planning to do with this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the grant is called the Health Engagement and Action for Rochester's Transformation Program, and shortened it stands for the shortened version are the letters HEART, HEART. The University of Rochester applied for a grant in conjunction with the County Health Department from the Centers for Disease Control, and the initiative is designed to try to prevent chronic diseases, reduce health care costs, and support healthy behaviors in Monroe County residents. The goal is not to increase the health services in the community, but to try to promote changes in the environment and policies and practices in our community so that people will be choosing healthier lifestyles.
Thank you. Are you going to be targeting certain areas, or is it just a whole scale across the whole county?
The grant has sort of two levels of targeting. One is the Crescent in the city of Rochester, but also the county as a whole.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-73.
Moved by Legislator Daniele, seconded by Legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-74.
Moved by Legislator Tucciarello, seconded by Legislator Antelli. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-75.
Moved by legislator Antelli, seconded by legislator Hannah. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-76.
Moved by legislator Hannah, seconded by legislator Gamina. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through the chair, out of curiosity, Jefferson Road is a state highway, is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Why then do we have this very circuitous funding process in which the state is giving money to the county and the county is giving it to RIT and RIT is going to spend it for improvements on a state highway?
Through the chair, actually, the lighting on the north side of Jefferson is, we pay for the operation and maintenance of the lighting. So that's how the county's involved. But also the money cannot go directly to RIT from the state. It has to go through some public entity. Money for the south side is going through the town of Henrietta. Money on the north side is going to come through the county.
Okay. When we get to through the chair, when we get to the legislature, will there be a bond resolution accompanying this?
Through the chair, no, not for a grant.
Thank you.
There is not.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-77.
Moved by legislator Gamina, seconded by legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we learned a couple of years ago that a vertical curve is a hill. Do I dare assume that a horizontal curve is what the rest of us would call a curve?
Through the chair, yes, you dare to assume that correctly. I'm glad I can always educate the proper terminology. I'll have to put something together, but vertical curves and horizontal curves, hills, and then the rest of them.
Okay, then what is a ball bank study?
Through the chair, that's the measure of the comfortable speed that a vehicle can drive through the curve.
Oh.
And that ball bank study determines what advisory speed we put below the curve or turn sign, telling you what is the appropriate speed you can drive that at and what the comfortable and safe speed is.
Yeah. Very interesting. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-78.
Moved by legislator McCann, seconded by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion? Legislator O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do the improvements to the aeration system, does it involve a capping of the aeration tank?
Through the chair, no, it does not. It involves the replacement of the existing and original surface mechanical aerators that act essentially as large propellers that infuse oxygen into the aeration tanks, of which there are 20. And we're replacing that technology with fine bubble diffusion, which diffuses oxygen at the base of the tank into the waste stream. It's far more efficient at the oxygen transfer. It's far more energy efficient. We expect to save upwards of $500,000 on our utility bill. It's less noisy, so the neighbors will be very grateful, I believe. And it's better working conditions for the operators there. There's less mist and splashing of the waste stream.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, the reason I was asking about the cap is at one time, and this goes back a while, there were some neighborhood complaints about odors and so on. Are you still seeing complaints from neighborhoods, or is the odor problem largely resolved in your view?
Through the chair, our odor complaints have been dramatically reduced over the years, in particular because we installed centrifuges for dewatering, and it's a very contained process, and we've got some very sophisticated odor control systems managing that. Certainly, the processes that we're talking about with aeration will only assist in reducing odors. And, you know, holding tanks as well. Again, we've got updated odor control systems in place.
Great, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-80.
Moved by legislator Daniele, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-82.
Moved by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Antelli. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-84.
Moved by legislator Antelli, seconded by legislator Hannah. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-86.
Moved by legislator Hannah, seconded by legislator Gamina. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-88.
Moved by legislator Gamina, seconded by legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-90.
Moved by legislator McCann, seconded by legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-92.
Moved by legislator Daniele, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-94.
Moved by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Antelli. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-96.
Moved by legislator Antelli, seconded by legislator Hannah. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-98.
Moved by legislator Hannah, seconded by legislator Gamina. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, how do these rates that we're charging the other counties compare to last year?
Through the chair, the rates remain the same from last year.
Given that we're in a fancy new facility, which I'm sure entails more utility costs and, if nothing, just the depreciation cost on the new facility, why aren't we raising the rates we're charging these counties?
Through the chair, we're actually finding with the lead enhancements made to the facility that our costs are lower for energy costs. So, but we are involved in an NIJ foresight project currently where we're calculating what the actual costs per test, per discipline are, and we will be evaluating that and using that in future charges to the counties.
Are those calculated costs going to include the indirect costs, such as the depreciation on the building?
Through the chair, yes, they are.
Okay. Because the taxpayers of the County of Monroe have made a very sizable investment in that facility, and I applaud that. It's a wonderful facility. But that also suggests to me that the other counties should be paying more than they've been paying in the past. So I will look forward to the results of that study.
Legislator Gamina.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what is the most common reason that the other counties use our facility?
Through the chair, the most common reason is the service that's provided and the timeliness of analysis.
Through you, Mr. Chair, are there any other organizations that use our lab? other than other counties?
Through the chair, currently, depending on the jurisdiction and the investigation, there are submittals involving the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the ATF as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, how many submittals do you think that we'll have, or historically have we had per year?
Through the chair, historically, we've had about 1,000 submittals from the outside counties.
And through you, Mr. Chair, the 1,000 submittals does not mean there's 1,000 cases. One case may have 5 or 6 submittals depending on the intensity of that case. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. We do calculations based on submittal, which would be items submitted, because many cases have more than one item.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-99.
Moved by Legislator Gamina, seconded by Legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Mr. Chairman, I'm familiar with Rio and the Rio system, and it's an excellent system that has broad potential for improving community health and reducing healthcare costs. But I have some concerns about bringing the Rio system into the jail. As I understand it, with a Social Security number, and assuming the individual has signed the appropriate waivers, as this cites, I think that there's 373,000 residents of Monroe County have signed the waivers. With a Social Security number, you can go to the Rio system and look up everything there is to know about a person's health. Isn't that true?
Through the chair, that's not exactly accurate. You have to complete a consent form, and only the providers that are participating in Rio are able to look at an individual's medical history. There are some protections in place within Rio. They will check against records that are looked at and whether or not consents have been granted and whether or not the provider was given that consent to look into it. So it doesn't open it up for everybody to look into, just the providers that are part of it. Initially for the Monroe County Jail, we will be in a pull mode, so to speak. We will not be providing information about our inmates in the facility. We'll simply be getting information from other facilities or other organizations that are within Rio to assist us in getting information such as radiological reports, blood reports, things like that.
Who will have access to the Rio system?
The medical provider at the facility will have access to the Rio.
And they are all contracted through they're all employed by the contractor that we have in the jail?
Correct.
So there will be no jail employees or sheriff's office employees who will have access to the Rio data?
There's the possibility that an auditor that works for the sheriff's department or a sheriff's department employee that would be in the auditing role would be given access to limited information only for the purposes of looking at what the individual inside the facility has through our medical records, not actually looking into Rio. We wouldn't be granted access to Rio.
Obviously, what I'm concerned about is, for example, it would not be difficult to get my Social Security number. And we have had a few cases of rogue people in various places, including the sheriff's office, making inappropriate use of computer systems. What safeguards are in place that, using me as an example, that if someone had my Social Security number, they would be barred from looking me up in Rio and finding out my whole medical history?
We would have to have your consent to see your medical records from your medical providers through Rio. Without that consent, we have no ability to access your records. We were concerned about the same things, the confidentiality factors, but the medical provider in the facility would have to have your consent along with your personal information to obtain information from your doctor.
I have signed a consent with my doctor. My understanding was that then allowed people in the Rio system, such as hospital emergency rooms, to look up my medical records. You're saying there has to be a signed consent on the other end as well?
He asked that through the chair, by the way.
Through the chair, the way that it was explained to us from Rio is they have auditors that will check this, external auditors that Rio checks to make sure that you've granted the provider that is requesting the information permission to view your medical records. So they're constantly auditing this, so that's one of the safeguards that's there. We would actually need your consent in Rio in order to have our provider at the jail look up your records, even though you're in Rio through another, through your own medical provider.
Okay. So say, for example, through the chair, I was arrested tonight for something, and I was taken in and booked. I would be, and assuming this was in place, I would be asked if I wanted to sign a consent for Rio?
That's correct.
And if I said I did not want to sign, it would not be possible for anybody in the jail to access my medical information?
Through the chair, can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
If I refused to sign the consent as part of the booking process, and I assume that's now going to be a new step in the booking process, that people are going to be asked to sign a Rio consent. If I refuse to sign the Rio consent, would that mean that nobody over there would have the ability to look up my medical records?
Through Rio, that's correct. Okay. We have a new electronic medical records in the facility that we started. The employees of the jail medical providers would be able to look up your information on our own medical records, which is no different than it is right now. Right. But if you failed, if you said you didn't want to...
That's your internal medical record, right?
That's correct.
Right, okay. So without a signed consent on this end, it would not be possible to look up anybody's medical record information.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. Obviously, Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned about the civil liberties element of this. And I mean, I endorse Rio completely. It has, for patients that go into hospital emergency rooms, et cetera, it has great potential. But there is a real civil liberties element to this.
Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, I concur with what Legislator Haney has just expressed. In terms of the civil liberties concerns of this as well. But would it be possible for you to explain a little bit further what your booking process is in terms of, is this going to be a form that's totally separate, that the inmate who's being booked is going to have it explained to him or her that this is what they are signing? And does that consent then end when the inmate leaves the jail? And if they're rebooked in the future, do they sign a new form, or how long is it good for and all that? Thank you.
Through the chair, it will be an additional consent form that we do not have in place right now. And yes, when they left the facility and came back, we would have to do another consent form for that individual. That's correct.
Thank you. And so the only way that folks who are granted access to Rio who work at the jail will be able to view any of our, for example, our information on Rio or anybody else's information who's not in jail is if they were to violate the terms of Rio, correct?
Through the chair, that would be correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Very quickly, through me to you. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that even though you are in the Rio system through your primary physician or whatever the case might be, if you are arrested and booked, you still have to sign the consent form in order for your medical staff to look into the Rio system. Is that correct?
To the chair, that is correct.
I feel fairly safe with it in that regard. Is there any further questions? Legislator Andrews.
I just have another question, generally speaking, about Rio to the administration, through you, Mr. Chairman. Can we expect to see other referrals similar to this that we would be voting on to allow other entities permission to access Rio? Is this like a trend? I mean, I think we've done this just with MCH last year or so.
Through the chair, I know that Monroe Community Hospital is on board and the health department is on board also with Rio currently. Jordan Health Center is one of the large institutions that's on Rochester General Hospital. There's a number of, I believe it's somewhere just shy of 40 organizations that have signed on to push information to Rio. Currently, our goal is to pull information from it only and not disperse the information from the inmate population to anyone.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-100.
Moved by Legislator McCann, seconded by Legislator Daniele. Is there any discussion? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration or whomever is most appropriate to answer this. For a sublease like this, is there a competitive bidding process or an RFP process that goes before a sublease like this is determined to be granted?
Through the chair, no, there is not.
And so, through the chair to you, could you explain, obviously it seems like it's a good use of a vacant building that'll benefit both the airport authority and the post office, but is this something that there were solicitations made to fill this space, or did this company approach the airport authority? Can you explain sort of how this particular sublease came to be, through the chairman?
Through the chair, this is actually an assignment and sublease. So the post office still, up to this point until the sublease is executed, they are the lease holder. So there is not a parcel that would be subject to an RFP or looking for a tenant. It's actually Westover approached the post office to take their lease by assignment.
Thank you. Okay, and through you, Mr. Chairman, so just could you explain the term assignment for me?
Through the chair, yes. By this assignment document, the assignment is actually between the United States Postal Service and Westover. The only part that we will play in it is we will consent to the assignment.
Okay.
So the assignment is actually a document between those two entities.
Thank you. And then, through you, Mr. Chairman, if and when the lease, the primary lease with the post office expires, which I believe it's set to do in the reasonably near future, will then the county or the airport authority have to enter into a primary lease with Westover, presuming they want to stay? And if so, would it then be subject to any type of competitive bidding?
Through the chair, the current term of this lease expires in 2016. At that point in time, Westover will have the option to extend. The initial lease carries 2 additional 5-year extensions. So Westover will also have that option to extend for those periods if they wish to.
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Chairman, so in 2016, when the lease ends, then the Westover sublease, so to speak, ends at the same time?
Through the chair, that is correct. If they do not wish to exercise those extensions, it will end.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-101.
Moved by legislator Daniele, seconded by legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Legislator Haney.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, since there's been no snow to groom, what are the clubs using the money for?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, this is a state pass-through grant. It's based on the number of snowmobile registrations annually. I assume that if there's no snow to groom, that the clubs can bank it for grooming purposes in the following years.
Is there any further discussion? I understand there is some trail maintenance too, even though there is no snow. Am I correct in that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, absolutely. In addition to snow grooming, many of these trails are maintained in the off-season to allow snowmobiling and snowmobile grooming during the winter months.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 12-102.
Moved by legislator Tucciarello, seconded by legislator Antelli. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Last item.
Referral 12-103.
Moved by legislator Antelli, seconded by legislator Hanna. Is there any discussion? Legislator Andrews.
Mr. Chair, through the administration, just real quickly, this is the third part of a grant that we accepted last month. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any unfinished business to come before this committee? Seeing none, the February 29th, 2012 meeting of the Ways and Means Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Ways and Means Committee is scheduled for March 28th, 2012. Thank you for your indulgence, ladies and gentlemen.